strategic move that Eddie is making for AJ. Why are you not thinking, let's get him set up for
kind of animal?
If that was years and years and years ago. Like, Clarissa is a way different fighter from when she was back in the
Thanks to those joining me live and to those that have been joining me on our
defenses that she's had to have recently. You know, she's pulled people.
All right, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Roundtable about tribalism. I don't think tribalism is necessarily bad. I just don't think it has to be.
I don't know what he think he sees or what he think he know. But he going to the hospital, bro. Like, bro, you not winning that fight.
You guys mentioned, I think, D-Style, you mentioned him versus Regis Program. I'd love, that sounds like a...
I don't need you, you know, and PBC and others, in my opinion, it's like, oh, this is my guy. Like, there's a relationship.
Flat out, it's tough, and we call box, and we go to the end of the round, and then...
That would say, what do you mean by acting black? That's a fair question, but a participant of trash talk knows.
And they're announcing a fight 3-4 months from now, and he ain't gonna fight. I bet you anything, he's not gonna fight somebody as good as John Ryder.
All right, we're back with another edition of the Roundtable, and we have an awesome panel as always. We got my man from across the pond, Bass the Wonder Kid is in the house, ladies and gentlemen. And we have Danny the Lover Glover and Manny and Viva in the house, baby. And of course, we have D-Style. All right, let's get started here. We had a great weekend.
Of course, we just have D-Style. That's how
just
it's
D-Style. He's like the ketchup packet. He's like the condiment. All right, so here we go. Great weekend of fights, and a lot of people were surprised, except for Bass and myself, of course. Katie Taylor wins the rematch against Chantelle Cameron, and I thought was an entertaining fight. Some people complained. Some people had their qualms about the way the fight was fought. Chantelle Cameron complained a little bit as well. I think Jamie Moore was talking about how they had some issues with that knockdown not being called. So where do we go from here? Do we get the third fight, which seems like a natural? We're also hearing Amanda Serrano is, being mentioned as well. I did a poll on Twitter. Which fight would you guys rather see, Serrano or a trilogy with Cameron? And it was pretty close. I was surprised. I thought it would be Cameron overwhelmingly, but it was pretty close. D-Style, let's talk about the fight. And do you think we should get a trilogy here, or do you think Serrano deserves a rematch?
Well, here's the thing. I want to congratulate Katie on becoming undisputed in another weight class, right? That's 2 weight classes now. She got all the belts, the IBO included, right? The WBO, IBF, WBC, WBA, the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. She's getting all the belts. I think she proved herself to have all of them. First of all,
don't do it.
I couldn't stand the hold. There was just too much holding in this fight. I just got to say it. And I'm not mad. Like, Katie bears no blame here. You let a fighter get away with it. If I was her coach, I would tell him keep doing it. It's not. It is what it is. I'm not even saying that's why she won. She could have probably won anyway. But what I'm saying is, I'm not a fan of constant holding being allowed like that in boxing. The ref didn't warn her one time. It didn't occur to him one time to say, okay, enough with the holding. But nonetheless, just something I wanted to point out, and that's what ruined the fight for me a little bit. Right? It was still a good fight. It was still entertaining. I thought the first fight was better, in my opinion. But nonetheless, it is what it is. But KJJ for the win. She did her thing. You know what I mean? I want to see the Cameron trilogy, and a lot of people are not going to agree with this, but I don't think it should be in Ireland. She's fought Katie twice in Ireland. Katie fought everybody else outside of Ireland. Why can't she fight Cameron one time outside of Ireland? I just don't understand why Katie fought so many times in London, for example. Maybe that could be a spot they could fight at. I don't know. But I think Cameron, at the very least, she's the former undisputed champion at the weight class. She beat Katie the first time. I believe anyway, it's fair. I'm not even saying boxing's fair because it's not. That she deserves a trilogy fight. Perhaps in the UK, but at least outside of Ireland, I would say. That's just my personal opinion. I wouldn't be mad at a fight with Serrano just because of how entertaining their fight was the first time. Again, a lot of people are going to remember that fight. That's one of the greatest women fights of all time.
Indeed.
So it's not shocking to me that people voted for it, right? But I don't know if you mentioned which one beat what, but in the poll. But I think I could imagine why it's pretty close. But a shout out to KJJ, add another belt, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu belt, along with her boxing belts that night.
Show some respect, please. So, Base, the WBO. You're not showing respect. Base, the WBO had notified, I guess, Eddie Hearn and I believe Katie Taylor that she has to vacate one of the belts, either the junior welterweight one or the lightweight one. And I'm thinking about this and I'm saying to myself, I don't know, it's a tough decision for her, or if it even matters to be undisputed anymore, because I would guess, maybe I'm wrong, that there's probably more fights for her at 135 than there are at 140. So do you think that's going to have a bearing on what she does next? Do you think she could maybe even say, because I know Cameron even asked, why don't we fight for the undisputed at lightweight? Do you think that could even happen, that maybe Katie vacates the one at 140 and then they go down and have the third fight at 135? Or do you think she just goes right into Serrano at 135? How do you see this whole thing playing out?
Well, if you're going to talk about which one makes more sense for her to vacate, it's definitely the 140 belt, because she's not natural at that weight. But then if she keeps the 135 one, I think she's got a lot more challengers, younger challengers at 135. Like a lot more of the Asian fighters, the ones in her, her generation, her era, her cycle, are all kind of now sort of that 140 type range. Like you've got you've got people like Beatrice Ferreira and Caroline Dubois and Rhiannon Dixon. Those are all the 135 girls at the minute. They're all younger. I think she obviously wants to clean out her era, but that's another era. I don't know if she really necessarily has got the time for that. But I've always said, my personal opinion, especially even from the first fight, was that it should have been at 135, but it should have been for all the belts. So they did the rematch at the same rules and stipulations as the first one. So if they do have that trilogy, the trilogy should be at 135. They can write a petition to the WBO saying, look, allow us to keep this for the trilogy fight, all the belts on the line, then we'll guarantee to vacate one or both afterwards if you so choose. But I'm sure with Katie Taylor's cachet and her market value, if she puts in a strong enough petition to the WBO, I'm pretty sure that they will allow that on the proviso that it is the very next fight, and then you kind of get rid of the belt afterwards. In terms of what D-Style said, I understand the point, but the reason she wasn't fighting in Ireland before is because she wasn't able to. Now that she's able to at the back end of her career, that's where the money is. Chantelle, her best chance of not having a fight in Ireland would have been this rematch because she had more of the leverage. But the money is made in Ireland. Chantelle, unfortunately, doesn't have a huge fan base in the UK. It's respectable, but the fight isn't going to make anywhere near as much money here as it's going to make in Ireland. So when you've got the opportunity for a possible Croke Park or something like that, 80,000+ people, you're not going to get 80,000, 90,000 in Wembley or 60,000 in the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. So that's where the money is. And unfortunately, if Chantelle wants it, that's where she's got to go. However, unless Katie does it at 135, I don't think Chantelle will take it. I think she feels unhappy about the second fight. And I can see her looking to move up to 147 to either rematch McCaskill or fight Sandy Ryan and take a belt up there. She's already said, I'm tired of defending my belts. I want to fight for other people's. So getting back the 140 belts, I don't think is going to appeal to her as much as getting belts in a different weight class. So I think that's her next move. And then the Serrano thing is probably going to be Katie's next venture, considering she did say, I didn't even realize you said at the the post-fight press conference that she's more than happy to do the 12 3-minute rounds here. She thinks it would be a benefit to her, which I think is crazy, but hey, congrats to her. And if that's what she wants to do, so be it. And the quick one on the D-Styles salty KJJ references and comments. Look, I mean, in the day, it wasn't just holding. Like, she was fighting, then she was preventing her opponent from being able to retaliate. That's just smart. It's not like Lawrence Okoli. Like, Lawrence Okoli will initiate a clinch before he's even thrown a strike. She was in the pocket exchanging and then just nullifying the offense of her opponent and the retaliation. So, and it wasn't, there was a bit of it, but it wasn't like super excessive. I've seen a lot worse in other fights. So, it was smart and it's what she needed to do. And, sometimes when you got to get them belts back, win by any means necessary. That's what she done.
It's called clinch fighting, base.
Clinch fighting.
Clinch fighting.
A lot.
Clinch fighting. It's called base. A lot of people, they don't have the sophistication to understand the art of clinch fighting. It's a essential part of boxing. Guys like Rocky Marciano, Bernard Hopkins, Andre Ward. We can go down the list. Even Floyd Mayweather employed it in certain fights when he had to do it. It's the grittiness of it all. This isn't ballet. This isn't hopscotch. This is fighting. We get a little down and dirty sometimes. That's how it is. Danny, you know how it is, man. We've been hanging and banging since day one. You know how it is in the mean streets, right? All right, take it easy. Don't get a little discombobulated there now, please.
Phone dropped.
You okay?
Hanging. Oh, that you threw me right off there. Hanging and banging.
Yeah, you know how it is. I was waiting for a pause from base, but then I had to reel it back in. But I'm kind of thinking about this, and and Eddie Hearn mentioned that even Jamie Moore said we don't want to come back here, meaning that they seemed a little bit bitter about how the fight went, and they blamed it on seemed like they were implying that it was because they were in Ireland and Katie got everything her way, but she won the first fight in Ireland, so I don't understand the big controversy here. What do you think happens? Do you think maybe Serrano will be the next one because they don't want to go back to Ireland for a third one? How do you think this whole scenario plays out?
Yes, I think so. And the reason why Jamie Moore's upset is because there was a video that surfaced where he was in the changing room and he was talking to the ref for like the ref instructions. He was like, yeah, just make sure that she watches her head and the holding. So he was telling the ref about it. So it's something he was actually concerned about maybe from the first fight, but I didn't really notice it from the first fight really. But then what I did notice in this fight, and I only saw that video after the fight, by the way, but I did notice that in this fight, towards the beginning, there was a lot of head clashes early doors, which was lumping up Chantelle's head. Then she got a cut, and that kind of, I think it disorientated her a bit. So it took her a while to kind of get in her groove because she looked a bit slow. So maybe she was a bit apprehensive because when they would come in close, Katie, because she comes in quite explosive with her combinations, she was kind of, it was a bit boring in, which was Cameron was getting the worst of it. She wasn't doing it like, what's his name, Josh Warrington or anything like that, but they was clashing a lot. And then towards the back, it was only towards the last 3 rounds where she was egregiously holding a lot, where I was thinking, come on, ref, he's not even saying stop holding. He didn't even say that, let alone even take her to the side and give her a little warning, which was a bit, I think, feel a bit unprofessional. But when she is the A side, she's got Conor McGregor back in. They're looking for the Croke Park. So I think that for this final one, I think she is looking to do the Amanda Serrano one, probably in Croke Park, because they were talking about Amanda Serrano doing that in Croke Park first, to be fair. So with the 12 3 minutes, I think that will be a good thing because, Serrano's advertised the 12 3s already. Hopefully they don't have it as a massive ring like last time, and they have it a nice small ring so they can both get to work. And I don't think that it suits Katie, to be fair, because she's a bit of a 2-minute fighter. The way she throws her clusters, and you can see she gets tired quite quickly. From like round 5, her face looked quite desperate in there. It was like she was fighting for her life a bit in there. So I don't think that would even really serve her well, especially if Amanda Serrano's still able to keep her work rate up. I know she's getting on a bit, but if she's able to keep her work rate up and landing body shots from early doors, I think that she could end up getting the victory. And if she managed to hurt Katie like she did in the first fight with an extra minute to try and close the show, who knows what could happen. But I see Ben Shalom's trying to throw his little bid out there for Caroline Dubois to fight Katie Taylor in York Hall, Bethnal Green. Now, I know you guys ain't really familiar, but this is a venue that holds just like 2,000 people. Yeah, in the East End, we hold these for like little small shows. Just to let you know, I've boxed in there. Yeah, so this just shows you what type of venue it is. It's not nothing glamorous, but yeah, Ben Shalom saying
you were there, Danny. It has to be a nice place if you were there. Come on.
Well, and that's not even the best venue I've even boxed at, so that just says it all. But yeah, he was Caroline Dubois, but no, I don't think that's going to happen. So yeah, I think it will be Amanda Serrano. Chantelle Cameron, as Bay said, she said she wants to fight for other people's belts rather than always defending. So I feel she's probably going to wait for, well, I don't know, wait for the vacant titles, because Katie's been given a deadline now to make her decision which weight she's going to stay at and which one she has to give up. So I imagine she's going to go back down to fight Amanda, and then that leaves some vacant belts for Chantelle Cameron to win, and possibly some others if they decide to move about. Maybe Michaela Mayer might go back down if she's unsuccessful against Natasha Jonas, because she was looking very fat in the face at that press conference. So I don't think that's even the right weight for her, to be fair.
Okay. So Manny, 312s, something that Katie Taylor has not checked off on her bucket list. That would be something. Her and Katie, Croke Park, the first fight, I think was, I have to say, probably one of the best fights I've ever seen. I know people don't like, you're being hyperbolic. No, that was a very, very entertaining fight. It was climatic. I thought that fifth round was epic. It seems like this is a strong possibility. What do you think?
Yeah, I kind of like it, and yeah, I'm aligned with you. I think this is the best, first of all, female fight I've ever seen, and it's right there top with Mickey Ward and Arturo Gatti. You know, the only difference is, you know, these two girls weren't really much, they weren't hurt. But, you know, the reality is Amanda Serrano tried it and did it with Daniela Ramos in the last fight, and she looked great. She looked fantastic. And I think this is time, not disrespecting Chantelle. I think she did great. I think she did really beat her on the first fight. This one was a little bit shaky. And I just don't think she was that same, she had the same rhythm she had in the first fight. There was nothing wrong with that. And sometimes, you know, like, Bay said, you know, sometimes you come in with a strategy and I'm going to win no matter what. Styles make fights. I didn't see Katie Taylor clinching against, you know, Amanda Serrano when they fought. No, it's just different styles. And I think right now the people really want to see this rematch. I lost money because I had everything purchased except the tickets to go see her doubling, you know, and so it just didn't happen, unfortunately. And I don't think I'll go if it happens unless here in the States. But you know what? The attraction, it's out here in North America. I think they should come back and run it the second time here, and then, you know, have Chantelle, if she vacates 140, then have Chantelle go back again, and then, you know, get those titles back again. I mean, I know she can do it. She's the best 140 right now there is. So, and then later on we'll see if there possibly might be a rematch, but I think that should kind of part weights with that mentality, and let's get the fans what they want. We want to see Amanda Serrano and Katie Taylor too. I am a little bit concerned about Amanda. Amanda seems to be every fight, she just seems to be getting punches that really you don't want to. I mean, you got to increase your defense, and she gets hit a lot. And so with that, how much time does she's got left there? Right. One of the fights that I really wanted to see if Amanda moves to 130 against Alicia, but Alicia had some issues with testing positive. So that's out of the question. The other person that could be there is a young, talented Skyly Nicholson from Australia. But that's not interested for Amanda to be able to do that. Can she, you know? So what is it in stake right now for Amanda? She's just really in the bench waiting to see what happens. And I think Katie Taylor and Eddie Hearn, they need to pull the trigger on this one and make sure they make it happen. 3-minute rounds. Amanda looked fantastic. Just need to tweak a few things here or there, but that's going to be the struggle, because if you looked at the first round, there were 4 rounds in where it was a back-to-back, all the way down to the finish line and when the bell rang at the end of the round. And Amanda seemed to get the best of that. I even said, wow, 30 seconds more, and this probably would be a little bit different story. So, yeah, it's really going to benefit Amanda. And I just don't know if Katie really wants to buy into that. I think you were right. Katie is accustomed to that 2-minute round. And then the more she extends, the more she throw punches, the more she exhausts herself, she kind of winds down at the end of every round. And that's why Chantelle Cameron took advantage of that in the first fight. She just didn't do that. Couldn't really capitalize with the game plan she had in the first fight to the second one. I did see Katie win this one by very, very small margin. But right now, give the public what they want, the fans what they want. The second fight will be more money, bigger attraction than making a trilogy, which is rarely happens in one boxing. But right now, Katie Taylor, Amanda Serrano has to be soon.
Gotcha. So let's move on to the other huge fight that we had with David Benavidez versus Demetrius Andrade. This was a very impressive performance from David Benavidez. A lot of people thought this was going to be a tough fight. A lot of people thought it was going to go the distance, but this was a destruction. So I want to get everyone's thoughts. I want to start with you, Manny. What did you think of David Benavidez's performance? And do you think we're going to get this Canelo fight next year with David Benavidez?
David Benavidez has been proving himself. I mean, he was a guy that unfortunately lost the train to fight Canelo, and it was his own fault. You know, he didn't make the weight, lose the belt. Canelo had a roadmap, and that roadmap, Benavidez was there to capture every belt at 168. So he had to fight, someone else when the belt was vacated. And I think that he has proven himself. And I know Benavidez backed up with a lot of fans. I've been speaking to a lot of Benavidez fans. Obviously, some of them are Canelo haters, but at the same time, I can see where they're coming from, and I can see that they're eager to see this fight happening because I don't know how long can Benavidez stay at 168. I mean, he's got issues. He is committed now, and he looked great in his last fight. And so I had Benavidez winning by knockout in the 9 against Boo Boo. I think Boo Boo, I just feel real sorry about him. It's just been one of those guys that nobody really wants to fight him. People were avoiding him bad left and right, and his career hasn't been all that. And people were expecting more. Me myself, I've been expecting a little bit more, and then I enjoy him. He's a great guy, and but it's not the right timing right now. And he just came in across Benavidez is determined. Benavidez want the Canelo fight. He thinks Canelo is avoiding him. I just don't think so. There's just things happens when we build our plan and what we want to do. Is it going to happen next? I mean, I'm questioning myself because there's a couple of things happening. 2 more fights left with PBC, right? What's the best rest of PBC? It's not the other Charlo. I mean, which he had an okay fight against Benavidez Jr. But what makes it interesting right now, having 2 fights? Could it be Benavidez or could it be B-Ball? Just keep in mind that PBC is done with Showtime. Where are they going to go? Apparently, they want to go to Amazon Prime or they want to go to Zone. If they go to Zone, 2 fights left. What do you think is going to happen? PBC needs money. They need attraction. They need a lot of different things. So Canelo wants what Canelo wants. I think he doesn't want to avoid Benavidez, to be honest. But I think the reality is Canelo is as competitive as he is. He wants to avenge that defeat. And if he's got the chance to do it, PBC needs the money. They'll partner with Eddie Hearn. They'll show it on the network in the Zone if they don't go to Amazon Prime. And guess what? There goes Benavidez left to the side. But 2 more fights. Maybe the next one Benavidez and then Bivol, or maybe vice versa. So for that, I'm still a little bit on the fence in this one. But I do really want to see this fight because I think that in my eyes as a fan, I think that Benavidez deserves the right. He catch up with the train. Train's about to stop. It did stop. And now he can actually jump on board and get in and make money. But half of the world will see Benavidez Canelo. The entire world will see a rematch Bivol and Canelo.
So, Danny, I got a 2-part question for you. So, did Benavidez do better than you expected him to do? I mean, a lot of people said he would win, but did you expect him to win in that fashion? And I got a little bit of a different angle than Manny. I think if Canelo fought Benavidez in May and they had a rematch clause, if he were to lose, they could just do a rematch in September. And I just think the way those 2 styles mesh, I think it would be a great fight every time they fought, Canelo and Benavidez. I could not envision those 2 guys putting on a bad fight. So if you get 2 for the price of 1, and those would be 2 huge fights, why not do that? What are your thoughts on my theory on that? And let's get right to Benavidez. What did you think of his performance against Andre?
Yeah, his performance against Andrade, I believe that I predicted that was going to happen. I wrote it down in various comment sections. There was a guy called Boxing Beats and Rhymes. He predicted that Andrade was going to win. I said no, and I gave the reasons why. I said the body shots was going to take his legs away, and that his persistence will beat Andrade's resistance. He didn't want to have it. He said Benavidez is not a puncher. I said he's not a one-punch knockout artist, but he hits hard. He's like a Ricky Hatton type, where the shots hurt and it's smashing type punches, which breaks you down and it eventually takes you out. It breaks you down and wears you out, and especially when the body shots come in. So I expected him to take him out about round 6, round 7, because I knew Andrade. I'd seen him on the floor before, and I knew that his gas tank wasn't all that in a lot of his fights. You know, he's able to drop guys early, and then he's never able to finish his dinner because his punch power just it depletes very quickly. So I knew once Benavidez starts landing them body shots, I knew that was going to break him down. And then he did exactly what I thought he was going to do. I only gave Andrade 2 rounds. I think it was the second and third round. A lot of people gave Andrade the first round, but I didn't, because even the first body shot, he landed straight in the pit of the stomach, nearly took him over, wobbled him bad. And and then regarding Canelo, what was the second part of the question? Sorry, Joe.
I floated out the idea that because people are saying, well, he's not going to fight him in May. He'll wait till September. And I'm saying, I think he could fight him in May, throw a rematch clause in there just in case if he were to lose, and just have a second fight with Benavidez in September. That's how I think he's going to fight Canelo next. I actually think the fight happens in May. I don't believe this whole Munguia BS. So I'm just asking, do you think that's a possible scenario where he can fight him in May and then just have a rematch clause, and if he were to lose, he can fight him again in September in a rematch?
Well, I hope so, but I'm not too sure, because as Manny said, that there's the 2 fights left. So I'm not sure they want to do a double run of Benavidez, because Canelo is probably believes he can win it, and then who's he going to fight on the last fight? You know, he'll probably think he'd rather save the big dog for the last fight in September. So I imagine he is going to fight Munguia, and then that totally debunks the whole "I don't fight Mexican" theory. And then that leaves that Benavidez said that he wants to fight the same time as Canelo. So that way that there's no there's clashing dates for September. So he'll probably fight Jamal Charlo. Hence why Charlo was on the undercard versus his brother. But then that also brings if Benavidez can stop Big Charlo when Canelo couldn't stop Little Charlo, then it sends a great message to, hey, look what I've done. Now I'm banging on your door. Are you going to run from me any longer? So yeah, I think this fight will happen for Mexican independence, because it's all about the Mexican monster versus the guy who, Mexico's sweet darling, who I think will go down when it's all said and done in history as the greatest Mexican fighter of all time, above Julio Cesar Chavez. I believe so. And some people say that, Benavidez is not a real Mexican, he's an Ecuadorian. So it's going to be that battle. So it'd be, what better than to have it on Mexican independence rather than Cinco de Mayo? So I believe that it won't be Benavidez this Cinco de Mayo. I think he will have a Cinco de Mayo versus another Mexican in Jaime Munguia, just to tick over and probably get a nice stoppage, because he hasn't had a stoppage in a few years, Canelo. So that's probably going to play on his mind a little. And then it just sets the scene. So yeah, I think that's what's going to happen.
So first, did David Benavidez do better than you expected? I don't remember how you thought this fight was going to play out. I don't remember your pick, but that's number one. And number two, Munguia is supposed to be fighting John Ryder in January, and in Munguia's last fight, he went life and death with Sergey Derevyanchenko. And this is Ryder, I think, is tougher than Derevyanchenko at this point of his career. So what if Munguia is in a tough fight with Ryder and he goes life and death with him and maybe takes some damage in that fight? Will he even be ready for a Canelo fight in May? And getting back to the Benavidez, were you impressed with his performance? Did you expect that?
Right. So I thought, based on all of Benavidez's weaknesses that I've seen in several fights, and the fact he hasn't faced a southpaw in 7 years, I actually picked Andrade. So he did better than I thought. He did a lot better than I thought. And Andrade also did a lot worse than I thought. So without going into my big spiel about Andrade, I released a video yesterday. The first 8 minutes is about it, and I re-uploaded that section of the video today for the American audience if they want to see it. So yeah, I'm not really going to go into that, but ultimately, Andrade's trash. Like that's all I'm going to say on that. With regards to Jaime Munguia now the thing is, look, Derevianchenko, apart from Jamal Charlo, there's no one that's had an easy fight with him. So, like Jaime, obviously having ongoing life and death, you could say, well, it's almost a bad reflection just because this is a war-torn like Sergey Derevianchenko, but again, no one's had an easy night. Only one person's beaten comfortably. So you say that, then John Ryder, yes, John Ryder, I reckon is better than Derevianchenko, and I give John Ryder very good odds to win that fight in January. But here's the thing: if Jaime wins it, he could probably have a broken orbital socket, and he'll still go into that fight in May, because the payday is the be all and end all at this point. And I think Golden Boy wouldn't even. I mean, look, you've seen what they've done with Virgil Ortiz for like the last several years. He could barely like make a weight, and they kept trying to push him back at the same weight for the rhabdomyolysis thing. So they don't really care about the well-being of their fighters. If you know, as long as Jaime Munguia is able to stand up on his own 2 feet, he'll be at the weigh-in. And you've seen him at them weigh-ins. He'd be on his feet, and then he goes backstage and he's passing out. So so they don't care. He's gonna make that fight day if he needs to. Besides, he's a mandatory. So Canelo obviously wants to take that work, finish that, get through his mandatory, and then yeah, as Danny said, and Mexican Independence Day will be when the Benavidez fight happens. Mauricio Sulaimán's already asked him backstage, are you okay to wait until September before we call the fight? And he said, yeah, I'm prepared to wait. They said that we've already reached out to the other team, so they're already putting it in place. It will happen in September and not May. And ultimately, I think it's even better for the PBC in that aspect. If they've got him on a free fight deal, if you give, you do another fight now in May, then you do that as a third fight in September. If Benavidez were to beat him, just as a hypothetical scenario, then Canelo's going to want to run that one back. So now you've got leverage to try and tie him into another little short deal to say, okay, well, we'll give you that, but we need 2 fights. We want your next Cinco de Mayo, or we want you for another 3 fights for next year. We'll give you that one. If you win it, then we got these for you. If you lose it, then we got these for you. So I think to them, it makes more sense for them to do the quote unquote the biggest fight at the end of the 3 fight deal and not in May. But the fight will happen next year, 100% guaranteed. I've got no doubts about that, quite frankly, unless one person suffers a massive injury or is unable to make the weight, which I don't see happening just yet. But Benavidez is on the cusp, so if it doesn't happen by September next year, then yeah, he's not sticking around come 2025.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because there was a caller on Sunday that called into the show, the Ringside Reporter show. His name was Jerry. He said this similar thing that you said. If they make it a third fight, then they can leverage that to get another deal out of Canelo. So that's also plausible too. That makes a little bit of sense too. D-Style, what are your thoughts on everything you just heard? And do you agree with or disagree with anything? Oh, you're muted, brother.
Well, really quick about Benavidez's performance. Well, it was impressive. I still maintain, and I said this before the fight, so I'm not Monday morning quarterbacking, that this was a step down to the planned fight, and I think we saw that. I think it was more about perception and reality when it came to Andrade. All I ever heard was little violence playing for him, and poor guy, nobody wants to fight him, nobody wants to get in the ring with him. Nobody. Like Zach Parker was going to get in the ring with him. No one forced him out of that fight. Janibek wanted to fight him. He vacated his belt to not fight Janibek. All right, like he could have fought him. He could have fought plenty of guys. He had an opportunity to fight Jermell Charlo back in the day and brag to you, Beeb, that he's glad he didn't take it because it could be a bigger fight now. So I don't feel any sympathy for Andrade. I don't think he's a victim of anything other than himself. And this is the product of what happens when you don't sharpen your sword. Because steel sharpens steel, iron sharpens iron. I believe in that. And when you're constantly a minus 2,500 to win, okay, like constantly fight after fight, you're just cruising through easy fights. Or what's going to happen when someone's actually hitting you back and hitting you harder, and you're facing the best fighter you ever fought and the hardest punch you ever fought and the biggest fighter you ever fought all at once? That was a recipe for disaster, and it was easy money with a stoppage. I'm just going to say that. I saw it coming a mile away. With that said, I do agree with a lot of what I'm hearing. I just don't. All I want to say is this. If Canelo fights Munguia, that fight is trash. I cannot support that fight. That's a trash fight. And the only arguments I'm hearing is, oh, it's better to make it, they could use it to make the Benavidez fight bigger, or oh, it makes sense because Munguia's a big star. Munguia's never been on pay-per-view. I don't think Munguia's ever done a $1 million gate. If I'm wrong about that, somebody could fact check me. Okay. Last I checked, when he fought in Texas, he did about a $300,000 gate. Spare me this. He's a big star thing. All right. And spare me that it's Canelo has to do it because he's a big megastar or whatever. And even if he was, I like to see competitive fights. Okay, that's what I like to see. But if the promise of, but I'm fighting Benavidez next is there, then I'll live with it. Okay, it is what it is. All right, as long as I know what's in the horizon. But I just don't want to bother with it, because even if Canelo dominates, what if he breaks his hand? Well, what if he fucks up his wrist again? Right? What if he has another injury? Well, what if David Benavidez takes a fight with Morale or somebody else and he gets injured? Then we got to wait another year for the fight, and it could ruin the fight altogether. I think you strike when the iron is hot. The iron is hot right now. There's nothing else they could do, in my opinion, to make this fight bigger. I have family members asking me about this fight, and I'm ready to make some money. Right? Like they're convinced that Benavidez is going to beat Canelo, and a lot of people are. And I'm ready to bet them, and I'm ready to make some money. I'm ready for the drums of war. I'm ready for that fight. Cinco de Mayo weekend is the time to make it. But I'll still take it in September. It wouldn't be the end of the world, but that's just me. Maybe I'm impatient.
D-Style, don't forget, obviously, the Munguia thing is, it's because it's a mandatory. He is a mandatory challenger. So he's take that one first. That's the reason. He's not just taking it for the sake of taking it. It's because
he's going to
be
a mandatory.
He's going to be a mandatory. If you check the rankings, he's number one. He's number one. I can't remember. I think he's in the. I think the WBO have called another mandatory.
How is he number one?
He only fought one fight at 168.
He doesn't.
Don't ask me how, but he's up there. That's the reason. He's not fighting him for any other reason that he was taking care of.
Somebody forked out some money to get that dude right.
Yeah.
He's not. And before I just before we get on to the next topic. So remember when I said to you before, you used to ask me about, the eye test and blah blah blah. Yeah.
Sure, yeah. Go ahead.
Demetrius Andrade is the reason why I don't trust the eye test, because anyone can look good fighting nondescript opponents. I need to see what's on your resume before I can crown you a good or a top class or a top quality opposition for anyone. And that's why. And this was one of the first times where I went on the eye test and a stylistic what I perceived to be advantage, and it blew up in my face quite spectacularly. So I will go back to my tried and true method of how I rate fighters and their actual abilities.
Yeah, and I won some money on this fight versus one of my other friends. He believed that Andrade was going to win, and obviously my boy David Benavidez done his job. So yeah, D-Star, when Canelo Benavidez comes along, I'll be happy to have a nice little wager with you.
I bet you $100 right now. You got Benavidez?
So
yeah.
So base Jaime Munguia is ranked number 1 by the WBO, and he's also ranked number 2 by the WBC. Believe it or not.
Mm-hmm.
So you're saying what they're going to try to do to kind of put a little cherry on top with this Munguia fight is you're saying the WBO will maneuver it and make it a mandatory. Then that's what
Yeah,
you're
he's basically he's next in line to be the mandatory, and I think what they're basically just saying is, well, at this point, we want to get it out of the way now so that it doesn't come back when we don't want it. So if we do it now, then we got free reign to do what we want next. And I think that's how they're looking at it.
And the WBO isn't like the WBC. Like the WBC sometimes will take the 4th or 5th ranked guy and make him the mandatory. The WBO, judging by the history, if you're number 1, they do make you the mandatory. So what you're saying is totally plausible.
But they could take the number 20th guy and make him number 1, apparently. Right?
They could do that.
But
they could also do that too.
Yeah, but we're not saying it to say, I mean, what the hell is Mauricio Sulaiman doing asking Benavidez, are you willing to wait till September? Like, what are you doing? Like, what, are you working for Canelo, dude?
I mean, we know what he's doing. He's a jackass.
And then he said I think he said earlier in the year, oh, well, we're going to order that mandatory in March of 2024. We're definitely going to do that. So now he's kind of backtracking. And this is why, you just can't believe this guy, because he's constantly like waffling on everything he says. It's ridiculous.
We give privileges to champions of great stature.
Yeah, I didn't even know that Munguia was ranked number 1 by the WBO base. Thanks for pointing that out. I had to fact check that. That's incredible. That's incredible. All right, so let's move on to this interesting fight, man. I think this is a real interesting fight. Ryan Garcia versus Oscar Duarte. And we had Roberto Diaz on here a couple of months ago, I believe, and he was really high on Oscar Duarte, and he kind of made me excited for this fight, the way he was hyping up Duarte. And I haven't seen a ton of Duarte, but he can punch, that's for sure. And this press conference just kind of fired me up a little bit more too, listening to Ryan Garcia like blast Bernard Hopkins, blast Oscar De La Hoya. And these guys have been fighting on the internet back and forth for forever, and this is a toxic relationship. And even Ryan Garcia said this is a toxic relationship because the only reason why they're holding on to me is because I bring them money. So they don't really like me or whatever. Who knows the truth behind it all? I'm sure, obviously, he is bringing them some cash, and he is their big star right now. But what do you think, Base? Is this fight going to be more competitive than we think, more competitive than the odds makers have it? And is Ryan Garcia going to be 100% dialed in for this fight with all this drama hanging over his head?
Well, like you, I haven't seen a huge amount of Oscar Duarte, so I can't really speak to his main strengths. But I do know he does have punching power, and he's good in combinations. He's good up close from some of the footage and stuff that I've seen. But like I said, I haven't seen a lot of his fights. I think that it will be a competitive fight. I think it will be not dangerous, but I think it will be a challenging fight for Ryan. But ultimately, what I do know about Oscar Duarte, because I try and do some of the research, is he's a 135 pounder that's basically being brought up to 140. So it's not like Ryan is in there now fighting at the new weight against people that should be at that weight. Every fight he's had at 140, even I guess technically the catch weight with Tank, which is still technically a 140 fight because it's outside of the lightweight division, they've all been against like lightweights or super featherweights that have moved up. So in that sense, I guess they wanted him to be sort of he's banking on being the bigger opponent or the bigger guy in the ring come fight night. I think ultimately, again, I'm going to do a bit more research on Oscar today, in the morning when I wake up to see, so I can do a proper basis picks. But I think Ryan might have the hand speed. He's definitely going to have the hand speed advantage, but I think he's going to probably take, even if he doesn't take Duarte out in the mid to late rounds, I think he'll probably win it on points, and purely because he does better when guys are aggressive and they come towards him, which I think Duarte will do. When he goes having to try and find fighters, that's when he normally gets like chin checked or knocked down or hurt. But when he's more on the back foot and basically reacting to them is when he's is when he's most effective. And from what I've seen of Duarte, he looks very much like a more of a come forward fighter. The one thing I haven't seen the full press conference. Obviously, I've seen the the highlights parts when he obviously talking about Bernard Hopkins and Oscar, which was quite funny. But the one thing that I noticed is when they were doing the face to face, Ryan is looking down on Duarte, but he's got his chin up in the air, and I'm like, that's not a habit you want to still be doing. Like your chin needs to be tucked at all times. And him doing
check
that
yourself
to me
at all time base, even on the face-offs.
All times. But the thing is, the reason I even say that is because if you do it, then naturally you're always going to be inclined to just have your chin in the air. Like, get yourself into a pattern of repeat behavior, making sure it stays low and stays tucked. So him doing that, even if he's trying to say, yeah, look, I tower over you, it's like, it's still a bad sign because it's very high up. And I could see him potentially, if he runs forward like he done, trying to get busy, in a moment where he thinks he's on the advantage, he could get clipped and get hurt. But I do think he's dialed in, and I think he's dialed in because he doesn't like the criticism that he got before, and he almost like he's got a point to prove. He wants to come back with a dominating performance, and against a much smaller guy that's tailor-made for him, I reckon, from what I've seen, he's gonna succeed in that task.
So Danny, there was a moment that I thought we may not even get to this fight because Ryan and Hopkins were going to go at it on stage today, but cooler heads prevailed, and looks like we're going to get a fight Saturday. Do you think this is going to be a shootout and it's going to be fun as long as it lasts, or do you think Ryan's maybe tougher than he thinks here? Oh, you're muted, Danny.
Sorry. Yeah, I don't think it's going to be a shootout, but do I think it's going to be tougher? No, I don't think so. Do you know why? I think this guy, this Duarte guy, I've looked through his record. I've not seen much of him, but the guys he's been fighting, it seems a bit padded. Like the records ain't even all that. I saw he lost to Adrian Estrella on a split decision, who ain't all that himself. So I think that this is someone, it's a nice come down level for someone like Ryan Garcia to look quite decent in. Yes, he might put the pressure on for a bit, but I expect Ryan Garcia to take him out by about round 8. And but it was interesting at that press conference because it reminded me of when Adrian Broner was going at Leonard Ellaby. Stop there, shit. I know you got him here to be. Yeah, I know you can do it. And then but it was funny because Bernard Hopkins, even at the face-off, if you notice, he was saying something in Duarte's ear, and then gave him a nice little pat on the back, like of support. So it's like he's really invested in trying to get Ryan Garcia beat. Why, I don't know, because Ryan Garcia, he was in the highest pay-per-view fight of the year so far. Say what you want, but they weren't tank purchases. I know the people from Baltimore, I know they've got a Fire Stick or two in their homes. So I know it was.
Whoa!
Some of them or most of them.
You just took out a whole area, Danny. What are you doing?
Man,
he did too. He said that Canelo will be better than Chavez. Chavez, fans are at you right now too.
Oh no, I'm controversial today, but yes, no. So yeah, it seems that. So yeah, Ryan Garcia is good. It's big business. So it seems Bernard Hopkins. I don't know. He's a bit salty. I know Ryan Garcia said he retired at 45. I know he retired at 50. So he went on longer than most fighters really. So for him to say, "Oh, I'm going to decide whether Ryan continues or not after this fight," it seems a bit bitter. But it seems it's a very fragmented. So I'm not sure how long Ryan's got on that contract, but I think it's safe to say as soon as that contract is over, he's going to be out of there because it's not looking good over there. But yeah, I expect him to deal with this guy in about round 8. I think this guy's a bit of he's had a lot of padded fights, and I don't think he's as good as people are making out. He's knocking over, knockover jobs, which you're supposed to do. But yeah, I don't think he's all that. So I expect Ryan to do the business.
So Dave, they had a big back and forth, Garcia and Hopkins and De La Hoya, and it kind of spilled over at the press conference. And Ryan said at the press conference, they're bringing this guy in here to beat me. They don't want me to win. They're setting me up to lose. is Duarte the guy that they're going to use to set Ryan Garcia up to lose? Do you believe that?
Yo, I don't think it's far-fetched at all that that's what the intentions are. I actually kind of thought that when I first heard the announcement that Duarte was the opponent that Ryan Garcia accepted. But why did him and his team accept that fight? Do they not watch tape? And I don't think he's a scrub. There's a handful of Mexican contenders. You can include people like Lindolfo Delgado. You can include El Camarón Zepeda, an extremely highly rated, in my opinion, somebody that could be a world champion at lightweight. There's some guys that Oscar De La Hoya has that could beat the brakes off of Ryan Garcia. But Ryan Garcia is a star for other reasons. And thinking back at these nasty lawsuits, the beef that he's had with Bernard Hopkins, as you guys have mentioned, and Oscar De La Hoya, I wouldn't be surprised if Oscar De La Hoya is ready to cut his losses over those lawsuits and whatnot, and is ready to give, Ryan Garcia a piece of humble pie, a slice of humble pie, and get his ass whooped. Really, I really don't think it's that far-fetched. Ryan Garcia, in his own right, if you matched him up against the elite caliber fighters, and it's like had Teofimo Lopez fought him, anybody that's truly elite, you'd have seen the same result that Tank had. That's the exact same result. How many more of those KOs can somebody take before they lose their star power, right? You might as well just cut your losses. He's really only a fight or two away from the exact same thing that happened to Victor Ortiz in his career. Something embarrassing like that. If the Tank KO, quitting, or whatever you want to say about that body shot, if that wasn't embarrassing enough, there could be something else more embarrassing down the pipeline. So why not cut your losses? I don't think it's entirely far-fetched that we're going to see an upset and Oscar Duarte stopping him. I don't think it's far-fetched. Also, it's not far-fetched that Ryan Garcia will do the exact same thing to him, to Oscar Duarte, because we really don't know what type of punch resistance Oscar Duarte has, because he himself hasn't faced an elite power puncher, which means we got a good fight this Saturday, guys. So get your Mexican cervezas, get your Mexican takeout, and get ready for something special, because I think this is going to be a good fight.
Órale!
Órale! Tito!
So, Manny, I mean, Dave's making me like go on DraftKings right now and put a bet on Duarte. I'm tempted right now, man. What do you think? Is this a 50-50, like Dave said, or what?
I just don't know Ryan Garcia's mindset right now. Where is he at after this loss? And so even if you're sitting down and complaining to your people that you're bringing someone to beat me, you're there, you sign it. I'm sure you got to do your due diligence to see who they're trying to bring you up in there. Yes, I get that Oscar and Bernard Hopkins are great when it comes to ballooning up an opponent that, when you look at it on paper, might not see a lot of great fighters, that he's faced in the last few years. He's done two. Estrella, you mentioned one. And the second one that he did, it was Alex Martin, earlier this year. But Alex Martin is at 6 knockouts. You know what I mean? He's got no power whatsoever. And then he lasted 8 rounds. Remember, was knocked down about 2 rounds in the 8th round twice. He was knocked down twice. So there's no power in that. Ryan's got the power. If he's in a good state of mind, and if he wants to pursue this career and be committed and just part ways with everything that's happened to him in the past and the Tank Davis, and it's just mentally, I just don't think he's there, but he is capable of putting up a show this coming up Saturday, right? Even though Duarte, his last 11 fights were knockouts, that's a ballooned up an opponent that can bring up attention and bring in some revenue somehow, or people get the interested people to see it. I mean, this is what it's all about. His record is not that bad, just only 1 defeat, right? And so when you put things into perspective, it's like, okay, so we're bringing Ryan coming back. He's moving up to 140. No bullshit about can't make the weight or anything like that. He feels more comfortable, but you're going to bring also someone from the lightweight. And I love the fact that you actually commented on that. That was one of the things that I had. It's coming up from a lightweight. He's not a true 140. So they're going to be equally matched. Okay, yeah, but Ryan's been, up in that weight already, kind of, sort of. And this guy, he hadn't fought yet at 140, but at the same time, he feels more comfortable at 140. He'll be a lot stronger. but it all depends how mentally he is. And yeah, I think this is a good matchup for him for bringing him back. You know, it just creates a lot of, like, you know, people don't see the styles or understand several techniques, but when you see the record, wow, 21 against Ryan Garcia, both of them one loss, that's going to be a good fight. That brings the attention to the casual and not real boxing fans, which, you know, they want to see something coming up this Saturday. There's nothing else. So I think it's a good matchup. I honestly, I mean, if he's in a good state of mind, I think Ryan Garcia is going to really put up a great show and bring himself back and boost the morale, which you clearly mentioned that in these conferences, he's just not there. That's my concern. Is he into the game? Is he playing the game? Or he really wants to be able to commit and he's just really cool and relaxed? Same way he was with Tank. I think you got to be aggressive a little bit, not to really oversell it, but I think you got to have that game face going on since you start these conferences. So that way you can build momentum. Changing coaches, right? That's another difference too. So I don't know how it's going to work out right now, but I'm rooting for the kid. I like Ryan Garcia for whatever reason. I think he's real quick. He's got some power too. And he's good for the sport. Is he going to be a top contender at 140? Right? There's animals in that division. So be careful what you wish for. But at the same time, it's good to see him back.
You know, D-Style, Dave brings a great point up, and he makes an interesting parallel, because if you go back and look at Victor Ortiz after the Maidana fight, then you had the Josecito Lopez fight, and then you had the Floyd Mayweather fight. And there was a pattern of, I want to be careful here because I don't like insinuating this, but there was a pattern of giving in a little bit. And some argue that Ryan gave in a little bit with Tank. Now, is that the beginning of something bigger down the road? And do you think that Duarte, who could be like a Josecito Lopez, right? Could he be that guy to take him to that place again on Saturday?
Man, because here's the thing. I'm not ready to label Ryan that, and I'll tell you why. Because I saw Ryan show a lot of heart in that Luke Campbell fight. He was hurt. He was dropped. Campbell landing good body shots early on, outboxing him in a good amount of spots. And Ryan weathered that storm and then stayed long enough to start landing bombs. And eventually landed a big body shot of Luke Campbell. And Luke Campbell went down. Nobody questioned Luke Campbell's heart in that fight when he didn't get up from a body shot. However, the body shot Ryan landed on Luke, you could see like the ribs bend and everything. So you saw the damage. We didn't really see that in the body shot he got hit with against Tank. So I understand why people question, like, how bad was that shot? But call me crazy. Maybe I'm wrong. I do think Tank caught him right in the money. I think he caught him right in the liver. The delayed reaction is a classic delayed reaction that you usually see when they're hit to the liver. It's just what happens. You know what I mean? I remember Johnny Gonzalez got hit with a shot like that, very similar to, and I forget the name. I apologize, to the Filipino fighter that hurt him to the body, and he had a same reaction, and nobody could tell me that Johnny Gonzalez didn't have heart and wasn't a warrior, because he was. So I'm gonna wait and see what happens with Ryan as far as what he shows us heart wise and all that. Because he showed me a lot in that Luke Campbell fight, as I mentioned. But this fight is a dangerous fight. Oscar Duarte is a puncher. But I was looking him up a little bit because I don't like to, like, Gabriel Montoya, we've had on the roundtable several times, has said he doesn't just look at the numbers, he looks into the numbers, right? And so I'm seeing knockouts, impressive, right? High knockout ratio, no doubt, right? The guy has a 80.77% knockout ratio. 21 of his 26 opponents have been stopped. He's on a knockout streak. But when you look at the opponents, all of them have been knocked out multiple times. So I think that's a product of very good matchmaking. They're putting them in there with opponents that are a little chinny, maybe, that have been stopped before. And you put a puncher in there, then it is what it is. Now, it's a double-edged sword, Because part of it is, well, maybe those guys are tailor made for him, but also he's coming in with a lot of confidence. And a confident fighter is a dangerous fighter. If he believes he's the hottest shit since sliced bread, and he believes to knock out Ryan Garcia, he's dangerous until he realizes he can't. Ryan Garcia, we know, has a tendency, as Bass pointed out, to have his chin up in the air, right? The dude's a bird watcher. He's always looking up at something. He's looking at the, I don't know, he's looking for Sting for WCW up in the rafters. He's looking up there for some reason, okay? But speaking of Hopkins, I remember Hopkins talked about a habit he was taught in Philadelphia, like to have the tennis ball and walk around with it, even when he was like shadow boxing or whatever, to get in the habit of tucking in his chin. I think that's something that Ryan needs to work on. He has not fixed that yet. He needs to fix it. I don't think Duarte is the guy to play the Mongoose Cobra game with, offering him your chin to try to beat him to the punch. I don't think he's the guy to do that with. With that said, I do think the safe bet is Ryan Garcia to win this fight. I don't think that they put him in here to lose. And I don't want to be a conspiracy theorist. I don't. It wouldn't even shock me if they all talked about all this to create drama, because I'm gonna be honest with you, this got me more intrigued and more interested in the fight. And more people nobody was talking about this fight until this whole thing happened, right? It wouldn't shock me if Hopkins knows what he's doing. He wanted to make Ryan get mad, and mark my words, sometime after this fight, Bernard's going to come out, and whether he's telling the truth or not, I don't know, but he's going to say, oh, I did that to light a fire under his ass and get him motivated. He's going to come out, he's going to say that, mark my words.
Yeah, that's a good point. I wouldn't be surprised. So Dave also mentioned Ryan versus the top guys at 140. And we know Bob Arum has mentioned that he would love to match up Teofimo Lopez with Ryan Garcia in the first half of next year if Garcia gets past Duarte. And Teofimo Lopez I think it was at the fights last week, the Benavidez fight, and he was asked, did you get that, are you going to fight Ryan next? Did you get that offer? And he said, oh, yeah, I got the offer. I turned it down. But then today, Ryan said, I haven't heard about that. So is this kind of like a cap or no cap type thing? Is Teofimo Lopez, he says a lot of outlandish things that end up, being refuted by Bob Arum and others down the road. Do you think this is true what Teofimo Lopez says? Do you think he was even offered this fight, or you think he's just blowing smoke base? What do you think?
I don't know. I mean, I think possibly. I mean, look, if Bob did say that they were in negotiations to have that fight, or there was talks between the camps, so it's very plausible that something, maybe not like an official contract, but a floater, a feeder. Well, like, what would you think if we offered you this money? And sort of what kind of money would you be looking for? You might say, well, I want $10 million. Well, we can maybe get you to there, but the guarantee's got to be around 1.5. We need to keep this low and make more on the other side. Whereas he's probably like, no, I want more of my money up front. I don't trust pay-per-view. I don't trust the zone. I don't trust Arum. I don't trust whatever, because he's paranoid and delusional a lot of the time these days. So I think something was maybe floated to him, but I just don't think it was maybe an official offer. But I mean, to be honest, why not take the fight? Ryan's one of the bigger stars. You saw the pay-per-view numbers, and if he's looking as he did against Tank at that point, he's probably a damaged fighter. So in your mind, you should be looking at that as maybe an easy payday, because you're going to train hard for him, because he's still dangerous. But it's like, well, his confidence is going to be dented. I'm never going to really get another easy touch like this for that amount of money, or the potential to make on the back end, because it would have been a pay-per-view. And no one really would have argued about it, as much as they may not have been super happy, but they wouldn't have argued, especially after what Ryan just done in his last one. So, well, that proves that he's worthy of that status. So, yeah, I don't know. Teofimo does a lot of weird stuff. I'm only really interested in him when he's in the ring these days. Everything outside of it, I could care less about.
So do you think Teofimo's telling the truth there, Manny? Because I mean, he's coming out with numbers now, and it's kind of bizarre to me that it would even get that far at this point if they're talking about numbers, right? So this is why, again, there's been things Teo said, and Bob has come out and refuted a lot of things Teo said. So I'm not sure if this is true or if he's just kind of trying to clickbait here a little bit. What are your thoughts?
I mean, I hear your point, but this is not the first time Teofimo's had issues with top ranks and money. Even previously that. So I mean, is it something that he's making up? Does he really want the fight? I mean, I don't think he may want the fight because probably the fight at the 140 that probably will generate more money for him. Because even with Raleigh or even Subriel Matias, he's not going to make the same amount of money he's going to be making Ryan. So you're going to start lighting the fire a little bit here, there, and the fire's not lighting up the way you want it to, and then you're going to come out and make things. So he's always going to be crying about money. 1.5, I think for him, I don't know. I mean, is it worth it or not? But it could be, but you can definitely generate more money. And you're never going to take the first offers. If that's the case, you're never going to take the first offers. That's why I'm kind of believing that this is not true. And if Ryan Garcia doesn't know anything about that, he's not bullshitting. I mean, he's got issues with Oscar and Bernard, so he needs to part ways with Golden Boy, to be honest. Because how come if you're the sole owner of that, you're being managed by someone, great, you got your promoter, but you don't know the moves that are making around you, then that's the bigger concern. And I think that's what's happening also too, to be honest, because De La Hoya can be sneaky, to be honest. He can. And he's done it. Poor Mejia. Come on. And the rest of the fighters. That's why they're leaving him. So right now, I think, yeah, they're probably both sick and tired of each other. They're up the verge, like Bernard said. Did he really meant that? Maybe there is beef behind it that we don't know, that we can speculate there are, but we don't know exactly with that. And maybe there was just an ultimatum in one of the meetings. We're gonna bring this guy to kick your ass. Show me what you got. And maybe Ryan took it personal. We gotta get your second defeat right now, or something like that, to push and motivate him, just like D-Style said. And later on, he's gonna probably come out. I agree with you on that. So I don't know, man. It's just too much things going on right now, and Teofimo knows how to play the game. He's been there before, and Ryan has been trying to play that game as well, but he's just not in control at all of anything. He's just the boxer that goes there and he's a peon in a chessboard, right? If you once move forward twice, you're not gonna move. You know what I mean? You just got to go straight until you can see another one to go to the side. So, and that's sad, because I think there is huge potential, and that will bring a lot of money in a fight that a lot of people would want to see. That Ryan, on a right state of mind, I think Ryan definitely has the opportunity to be Teo. Why not?
So, Dave, people will look at that 1.5 million number and they'll say, well, if that's true, like, why is Teo only getting 1.5 million and they're offering, like, they pay Shakur Stevenson like $3 million a fight? But again, that would be a pay-per-view fight. Shakur Stevenson's never been on pay-per-view, so it's a different dynamic there. But do you think Teo's just kind of trolling a little bit to try to bring some interest to this potential fight, possibly next year, or do you think that any of this is true from him?
Yeah, actually, it does sound very plausible that it's all cap, and it's actually his way of strategizing to get what he's basically signaling. If you guys remember the Trilla drama that happened between Teofimo and Bob, how Trilla had made this tremendous offer and then wasn't able to come through with it, and then we got that whole Kambosos fight delayed as a result of Trilla getting involved and Teo, making a deal with Trilla. That thing didn't pan out. What I think Teofimo's doing here is signaling, I will fight the guy, but it ain't gonna be for 1.5 million. It's gonna have to be in that range, which you just said, potentially the 3 million plus range, because he saw the numbers that Ryan Garcia did on pay-per-view with Tank. Okay, Teofimo is must-watch television fighter. Okay, he's the complete opposite of Shakur Stevenson. He is must-watch TV, and he's not been given the opportunity to perform on a pay-per-view. What better dance partner than Gervonta Tank Davis or Ryan Garcia? That's if Ryan Garcia survives the weekend. But that, presuming he does, that's the second best fight for Teofimo money-wise. And we know Teofimo has a lot of mouths to feed. He needs that money. 1.5 million isn't going to do it, but he might entertain double that, which you just said Shakur Stevenson's getting paid 3 million, and he is the complete opposite of must-watch TV. So I hope Teofimo gets what he deserves.
Is Dave right, D-Style? Is this like Teo's way of just kind of like putting Top Rank on notice? Like, hey, I'm not falling for that okie doke again. Like, if I'm going to be in a big fight, you're going to pay me.
Look, where the smokes there's fire. It wouldn't shock me if he was offered something, and if Ryan has no idea about it, right? Like both those things could be true, because it was a surprise to Canelo when the Zone said it's in your contract to fight Gennady Golovkin. And he was like, what? No, it's not. I have a deal with Golden Boy. I can pick whoever I want to fight. I'm not contracted at all to fight Golovkin. That's what caused the first issue and why they had to restructure the whole deal, right? Oscar was promising things to the Zone on behalf of Canelo without Canelo's consent. It was news to Canelo, right? So it wouldn't shock me if they're kind of talking behind the scenes, and maybe it was just kind of like maybe they just threw it out there, right? And maybe it was presented to. It doesn't mean it's an offer. It doesn't mean they showed up with a contract and gave it to him. You know, maybe just word of mouth was like, hey, they're saying 1.5 million, like something like that, to see where they're at.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. I keep hearing that only 200,000 of those buys were Tanks and 1 million of them were Ryan's, right? That's what I keep hearing, right? I know that's not how pay-per-view works, by the way. I just do. When De La Hoya and Trinidad were the first non-heavyweights to do 1.4 million, right? You couldn't add both of those guys' pay-per-views together to get to 1.4 million, right? De La Hoya, Mayweather, you couldn't add both their pay-per-views to get to 2.4 million. You couldn't add Pacquiao's and Mayweather's together to get to 4.5 million. Like, that's not how it works, okay? But since everyone's so convinced about that, and if Ryan's convinced about that, and Golden Boy's convinced about it, and Teofimo obviously is only entertaining the fight because he believes it's a money fight. It's not because Ryan is a challenge or the most difficult fighter, that is, I should say, and because he has a belt or nothing like that. It's because he's a big name. You want the perceived popularity, and you know what? I could just say the social media popularity of Ryan Garcia. You want that status, and Ryan wants your credibility, right? You both have something to offer the other. Tell you what, like 1.5 million, and I'm nobody, but I'm just going to throw this out there. Since you guys think you're big stars, and Teofimo got mad because the Tater fight wasn't in the big house in Madison Square Garden, he thinks he made Disney 100 million, and he thinks he's a big star, and Ryan thinks, and a lot of people are convinced that Ryan could do $1 million by himself. Then 1.5 million guarantee, and then you get a pay-per-view cut. You're going to sell a lot, but you're going to sell millions of pay-per-views. So just put in the contract, and you get a piece of every pay-per-view that's sold. It should be a very easy fight to make. There's no reason. You don't need a big guarantee if you're going to sell like that, right? So I think a lot of these promoters need to start getting smart and say to guys like Teo, oh, you think you made us 100 million. Okay, tell you what, we're going to put you on pay-per-view. Go ahead and generate the 100 million and you'll get 100 million, right? As simple as that. It's time to show and prove. So it's a very makeable fight if they just put the pay-per-view back on it. And if he can't sell, he can't sell. And he can't get mad at anybody if it doesn't sell. Okay? I think it's a makeable fight. I still think it's a makeable fight, and all that good stuff. I just want to put that out there, but I just want to point out it wouldn't surprise me if he was offered the fight, and Ryan has no idea about it.
So, Danny, do you think that regardless of what Teofimo Lopez says, that this fight is more than likely going to happen if Ryan Garcia wins on Saturday?
Well, it depends on the money, really, because last time I saw Teo, well, before, he was being a bin man, throwing trash in the back of a van. So he was saying that he brought Bud Light to Top Rank. You know, he was saying, and I saw in a recent interview, he said that, well, look, you guys want to pay those other guys that money, but so yeah, you're giving that money to Shakur, but this is the type of fight you're going to get. So yes, he does deserve a bit more money. But that is a good analogy that D-Style said about if you're really worth what you say you are, then hold a 1.5 and give him a good cut on the pay-per-view, like say you can get 70-30, you know, call his bluff, so you can get 70-30 at a pay-per-view. If not, I think he does deserve probably about, well, for Ryan Garcia, how much? Yeah, you probably if you give him about $5 million, I think that will do it. I think that will do it for Teo. I think he'd be happy with that. So yeah, it could happen, but he obviously needs to get himself in the right frame of mind, make sure that he's training properly still, make sure his dad hasn't gone off the rails again, because we've seen what happens last time. You know, they come off one big win and his dad starts, you know, drinking in bars and looks like he's high on something. So yeah, he's got to just make sure that him and his family and his team are correct. And I think, yeah, offer him $5 million and you'll get the deal. But don't low. I think 1.5 is a low ball to fight someone of the magnitude of someone like Ryan Garcia, I believe.
Okay. So let's jump ahead to another fight this weekend. Michael Conlan is coming back, taking on Jordan Gill. And Michael Conlan's been stopped before. He's coming off a horrible knockout loss to Alberto Lopez. And this is kind of like a comeback fight, if you will. But is this the right fight? And they're already talking about matching him against Lee Wood in a rematch. And they're already, you know, throwing other names out there. But, I mean, can he get back to that level? And, I mean, this is a guy, Jordan Gill, 8 knockouts. So I guess they're being a little careful with the opponent selection here. But does he need to really look exceptional, Danny? And can he look exceptional coming off that knockout loss? Because, you know, sometimes a guy will get knocked out, he'll come back, be a little cautious in the next fight. Does he have to kind of set the world on fire to justify that, hey, I deserve another big fight with someone like a Lee Wood?
I don't think he has to set the world on fire, because he's never really ever set the world on fire, to be fair. But I wouldn't put him in against with Lee Wood. I think Lee Wood would take him out even quicker. Jordan Gill, I know he's got 8 knockouts on his record, but, you know, people like me and Bates, we've seen him live in the flesh fight a few times. He can punch a bit, but he is easy to hit. And Michael Conlon is a very good southpaw fighter. So I expect him to be lighting up Jordan Gill. I don't think Jordan Gill is quite the fighter he even once was. And even a couple of years ago, you know, he got DDT'd on his head. He was getting bashed up before he pulled the punch out of the gods to turn the fight around, thankfully for him. But I think this is a good matchup for Conlan to get back to winning ways. I don't think it'll be that easy, so he's not going to look spectacular. But I believe he will get the victory. But I wouldn't want to see him in with Lee Wood, because I see him getting starched. I'd rather see Lee Wood Warrington 2, where Warrington was winning the fight until he got, you know, dropped, but then it got potentially prematurely stopped. But yeah, for Michael Conlan, what I would like to see is how his confidence is, because, you know, he got knocked out by Lee Wood out of the ring cold in the last round. He got taken out by Lopez. So those kind of knockouts, they normally take a fighter's confidence away. So if he's able to still keep his confidence and not be gun shy and stuff like that, where he can still pull the trigger and still fight the way he does, then that would be impressive in itself. But I'm not too sure. You know, hopefully, if he does, it will show that he's very strong-willed. But I think this is a good matchup for him. But Jordan can punch. Jordan Gill can actually punch, believe it or not. I think his record doesn't do it justice. Sometimes when you're coming up early in your career against certain journeymen and gatekeepers, they're very negative, so they can kind of survive, and then it doesn't really give your KO ratio much boost. So Conlan does still have to be careful. But I think with his skill set and timing, if it is on point still, that he should get a points victory over Jordan Gill.
Yeah, so Danny makes some great points, D-Style. Do you think that Conlan's confidence may be a little bit shaken going into this Jordan Gill fight? Because Eddie Hearn said, you know, both these guys are fighting for their careers. A loss for either guy could spell the end of their career. So when you put that much pressure on somebody, and judging off of what happened in his last fight, could he come out a little tentative? Did you think that this may not be a stellar performance from Michael Conlan against Jordan Gill?
I think
this might be interesting because of that.
I think Conlan will look good in this fight. I do. It reminds me a little bit of, although this is a look. Both the stoppage losses were very devastating. You know what I mean? The first one probably stung more because he was like on his way to win, then he got knocked out of the ring, which was devastating. But like the Alberto Lopez knockout was just it's one of the best knockouts I've seen. I mean, he knocked him out. It's a knockout of the year candidate. So of course he's gonna have to be tentative and all that, but he went right in there with a puncher like Mariaga right after the wood stoppage, and he looked confident. And I'm expecting that he's going to be doing the same here. I think. I hear Danny, but I think it's safe to say, in my opinion anyway, that Gill is not as hard of a puncher as Manuel Lopez, right? So he's going to have to deal with that level of danger. Now, could he have flashbacks if he gets hurt? Who knows, right? But I think Conor will win this fight. What I will say is this. I saw that little piece he did with Matchroom where he's kind of like, you don't see the interviewer, but you could tell he's answering questions. And he says, you know, I want to get back. I want to get to a position where I could be a world champion. I have to be honest. I don't know if Conor will ever be a world champion, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Boxing is a very difficult sport. Getting to that level is hard, right? All I want to say is this. This is why I miss certain boxing shows like Friday Night Fights. I miss those. There has to be, like, there's so many levels to boxing, and guys right below that world championship level are still good fighters. They still put on good fights. They're still skilled. They're still fun to watch. They're great for up and comers to see if they can pass that test or whatnot. And I feel like Conlan can be a guy like, dare I say, like a Mickey Ward type fighter at that level, and give us a lot of great fights. He's been in some great fights when guys could test him, right? And there isn't really an avenue for that. Like when Eddie Hearn said about it's a sink or swim, their careers on the line. I'm like, maybe at the world stage, but that doesn't mean Conlon can't fight. And maybe Conlon doesn't want to fight just at domestic level, but he could still be a really good domestic level fighter. And I think there's a place for those fighters. And that's just how I feel about it. But it is what it is.
Base, is there any danger for Conlan in this fight?
I'm gonna be real with you. No, I don't normally do snap judgments. Obviously, I like to try and give as much as I can, but there's just way too many things, red flags on the other side to suggest that this is gonna be anything but a devastating KO. I think it's gonna be a KO from Conlan. I mean, look, if you look at Jordan Gill, I mean, he's no longer with David Caldwell because he wanted to be closer to home. He's being trained by his father. So he's not even like another outside trainer. He's basically he's got his dad doing pads with him because he wanted to be closer to the wife and also the children. And I think he's already said that he's not looking to stick around for too much longer in the sport. But he wants he sort of wants one more big opportunity. But I think what he really was saying is he wants one more big payday, or big comparatively to him. Conlan, I think the fact that Conlan is delusional enough to think that he's at that world elite level is what is going to stand him in good stead, because I don't think he'll ever win a world title, but he's going to always believe that he can, and he's going to go wherever he has to in order for that to take place, in my opinion. And he'll probably always kind of just be a bit below, but he's got a big enough sort of fan base and enough interest that I think he can always kind of get those big fights. And as D-Style said, yeah, he's definitely not a fighter that wants to just be in good, decent scraps. Everything for him is about getting to that world title. So if he ever realizes that he can't get there, he will call it quits. And that's why Eddie is actually correct when he says career's on the line, because his career, based on what he wants, definitely is. And Jordan's career, I think, yeah, like I said, I think this is just one, maybe not the last, but it's one of a few last hurrahs. And I can see him getting taken out somewhere in the middle rounds, round 4, round 5, even before middle. it's gonna be fun for maybe the first two rounds, and then after that, yeah, I can just see Gil getting hurt and maybe not even just wanting it anymore, and the referee just deciding to stop it.
So, Dave, I want to paint the picture for you. What if we were to take Duarte and Gill and put that in for a parlay on Saturday? How would that look, man? I mean, is that realistic?
There's no chance of an upset for Gill.
Wow, that
There's
parlay
no
has
chance.
got a lot of money though. Yeah.
Listen, Beeb, that's good matchmaking. Okay, Conlan still has a lot to offer as an Olympic medalist with his big star, and all the attention he brings in Ireland and the audiences he can still draw in New York City. That's good matchmaking. That's why I said earlier today I had to question the matchmaking that Oscar De La Hoya did with a wounded fighter like Ryan Garcia. What you wanted to do with Ryan Garcia is match him up against somebody that would give the illusion that he was in a real fight, but at the same time, bring back Ryan Garcia to a mental state where he had the confidence and where you could showcase Ryan Garcia's natural talents, his exceptional speed, his power punches. Conlan versus Gill, that is good matchmaking because you still have a guy in Conlan that could be a potential world title challenger. I could see him doing well and not necessarily performing well, but doing well in a fight against somebody like Robeisy Ramirez, a gold medalist. There's still money to be made with those type of fights with his big audience, but you've got to groom Conlan back into that confident state where he does have exceptional boxing skills, but maybe his punch resistance is a bit shot. Maybe he'll always get knocked out when he gets in himself in a world title opportunity, like he did against Alvanado Lopez or in a rematch with Lee Woods. He probably is going to get knocked out again. But in the meantime, you rebuild him and you make money off the fighter and potentially set him up down the line after 2 or 3 good wins and see, propose a fight with Robeisy Ramirez, somebody like that, because that is a very sellable fight. That's good matchmaking.
Yeah. And the Irish people could travel. They travel.
Yeah.
Irish
Of course.
Travel. I mean, I
Great
remember Carl
fans.
Frampton. Wow. Everywhere I went to see him, boom, packed them full with.
Yeah.
So base, you're saying he ain't gonna be content being like on Katie Taylor on the cards, or
Not unless the title involved.
Nah.
So, Manny, is this a good confidence builder? Because, like everyone said on this panel, Michael Conlan still has that fan base, and he may or may not become a world champion again. But I'll tell you this: seems that he can definitely get in a big fight again, and this will be a good step in the right direction for him to get back into a big fight. So, I mean, is this the perfect fight for him at this time?
Well, I mean, it is. And if you think about it, Jordan Gill last fight was a year, 1 month, and 2 days ago. And this is fighting against Kiko Martinez, which Kiko Martinez 7 months before that lost his title against Josh Warrington. All right. He's the best fighter he's fought. All right. So not a lot of power. I remember that fight. I mean, it was just a disastrous fight for Jordan Gill. So for me, this is a good confidence level of someone that fought a former world champion. That's about it. And then Michael Conlan. Will he ever be a world champion? I'm not sure. But yeah, you're absolutely right. This is the opportunity to build his confidence level. I actually had Luis Alberto Ramirez. I know I got hated, I got trashed, everything like that. But he actually performed super well. I'm Josh Warrington, beat him in a majority decision. Then he got Michael Conlan. Then he beat Joey Gonzalez. So listen, I mean, right now, this is a good chance for him to bring it up and to kind of part ways with those 2 defeats. If he's mentally where he needs to be and just kind of set those things aside, which I'm sure he has, and let's see how he looks. But absolutely great matchmaking. You guys have said it, and I see a really, really good performance out of Michael Conlan. Absolutely right. You got to squeeze that boxer as much as possible, knowing how your fan base will support you everywhere you go. He's likable. He's a cool guy. I paid to go watch him and see fight, even though if he loses again, that medalist status stays you forever. And so a lot of people are attracted to that. In town fight, Michael Conlan's fighting. I mean, hey, so it'll be nice to see him on a Katie Taylor fight. But I don't know. They have right now. It seems to be like who is the next big time Ireland fan right now, boxer right now, and so someone wants to take that ringside title, it won't be Michael Conlan, but it definitely going to give excitement to a lot of their fans. And I see him, if they keep matching him that we're doing right now, I can probably see maybe a potential couple of years, I mean, not a couple of years, maybe one more year, maybe 2024, end of 2024, maybe 2 more fights. He can probably contend. Who knows? Leewood rematch? I'd love to see it, but man, he just I don't know. I think Leewood is on a different league right now, specifically for the last 2 fights he had. I mean, it's just he's not there.
All right, so we're down to the home stretch, last topic of the night, and I know it's almost painful to keep talking about this, but now the BBBOC had said they have not approved Conor Benn to receive a boxing license, and it's been talked that he's supposed to be potentially fighting on February 3rd against Chris Eubank Jr., and they have not approved his license yet. And Robert Smith went on TalkSport and said, the reason why we haven't approved his license is because he hasn't gone through the proper process. And I don't like running interference for anybody, but again, I followed this whole story, and he did follow the process. They had a hearing with the National Anti-Doping Panel in the UK, which is a tribunal. He went through that process. They cleared him to fight. So then UKAD and the British Boxing Board of Control, then they decide we're going to appeal that decision. Now, again, the likelihood of them being successful in that appeal is virtually slim to none, okay? So it just seems to me like all they're doing now is just dragging this out because they want a virtue signal here, particularly the Boxing Board of Control. They want a virtue signal here and say, oh, well, we did everything we could, and, we just couldn't prevent him from getting his license because, we even appealed it, this, that, and the third. It just seems like they're dragging this out. They're going on TalkSport, and they're just trying to make a big joke of this whole thing. They're just trying to blow this thing out of proportion, and they're trying to make themselves look good while making Conor Benn and Eddie Hearn look bad for whatever reason. Ultimately, I think he's going to get his license back. I think he's going to win the appeal come January. What are your thoughts on this whole thing, D-Style? You're kind of getting sick of hearing this, and what are your thoughts on the BBBOC here? What's going through their minds right now? You're on mute, brother.
Look, all I know is the following. Okay, I go back and forth a lot with this PD thing. Because on one hand, I don't think it's fair when fighters have an unfair advantage, right? But in the other hand, it's like, what are we really doing here? There's no uniformity, and I know that's hard to have because there's boxing is a worldwide sport. The BBOC that runs things over there, it's going to be different to, let's say, the Texas Commission over here. It's just everything's just different. I get that. Right. But Conor Benn theoretically already served his quote unquote sentence, really. I mean, it's like, for how long were you going to suspend him? I think it's time served at this point. Okay. In my opinion. And then you have an opponent that wants to fight him anyway. Eubank went out and said, I'll fight him. I'll also fight the guy. I'm good. So you're telling me, I don't know, the whole thing is stupid to me. It's annoying. I think I never seen so much hoopla over a fighter testing positive the entire time I've been watching boxing. The level and extent they've gone with this is unbelievable to me. Now, if they did this with every fighter, then at least you could say, hey, well, that's just the way they do it in boxing. But that's not how they do it in boxing. Okay? That's not how you do it. You're treating him different than you've treated other fighters. And that goes for the media as well. Okay? I think, when did he test positive? It's been a year, right? It's been over a year?
I think it's been over a year, yeah. Almost
a year and a half. It happened in June last year.
Yeah, so
there you go. There you go. At this point, Just make a quick, speedy decision. And I think the appropriate decision would be, look, we're going to let you fight, but if it's positive again, it's going to be more than a slap in the wrist. Next time, we're letting you know right now, it's going to be a 2-year ban or whatever it is. So let them know ahead of time what it is, and let's keep it moving. Like, like, what are we doing here? Like, it's just my opinion, but that's all I really got on it.
Yeah. So again, Manny, I normally don't side with people on this. I just kind of stay neutral, but I followed this whole case, and he presented his evidence to the National Anti-Doping Panel, which is the tribunal in the UK. Right? They make the decision. It went that far, and they had his hearing, and UCOT agreed to it that we're going to have the hearing, and they were going to abide by the decision by the DP, right? They agreed to it, and now they didn't like the result of that hearing, so now they want to appeal it, right? So D-Style makes a great point. At this point, it seems like it's personal now between the British Board of Boxing Control and Conor Benn and Eddie Hearn, and like I said, I don't like taking sides, but it's quite evident what's going on here. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, you put up some great points. I haven't been following up as much as you have, but right now, to be honest, is if you served your sentence, if you pay your dues already, why do you have to keep bringing this up and restricting this individual that made a mistake, paid his dues, and now you have to continue to cut his license so he's not going to be able to box? That's just BS for me, right? So, but at the same time, I have hard feelings for, which I know he paid his dues, but for using PEDs. I had high hopes in Conor Benn. I call them the Fat Fours at the 147, Butinas, Virgil Ortiz, even Rocha. Those are my top 4 in 147 at one point. But then after that, it's just I don't know what's happened with his career. He wanted to move up. I know that the belts were held hostage by Crawford and also with Spence at that time, but coming in and making a mistake like that, and why should you continue to be punished? What are the reasons? What happened inside the hearing? What did they say? Right? Because there has to be an explanation. Something I don't know. You may know. Like if I'm being accused of something, okay, great. I did my time, and then I come back. Why I have to? You have to help me ascertain why are you declining, right? My way to get back to my sport, to my job, basically, and then now it's being denied. So, I mean, I don't know the nuances of that behind the scenes, but I know that it's BS. He did something wrong. He paid for it. Why does he have to continue to pay for the rest of the life? I don't get it.
Dave, do you think Conor Benn's being treated fairly here by the BBOC?
I'll be real with you, Babe. I haven't been following it like you have. I understand there's an appeal. I understand we just saw Conor Benn fight on short notice on DAZN in the state of Florida. And I watched that performance. I guess he fought at 154 against a battle-tested Mexican. I liked a little bit of what I saw. It gave me old glimpses of the old devastating Conor Benn, the guy that was mowing down the 147-pound division. I've never been excited about this fight with Chris Eubanks, a guy who's fought as high as 168, all this catch weight bullshit to have these two, sons of legends fight in the UK. I'm not from there, so I don't understand the magnitude of how great this pay-per-view could be. Just sounds like a money grab to me. So if there's a delay over an appeal, then I say let the appeal go through. What I want to see from Conor Benn is Conor Benn now made an appearance in the U.S., is commit to being the best welterweight he can, potentially enroll in something like the WBC's clean boxing program and get back into fighting contention as a welterweight against, like, we've now got these great options like Giovanni Santillan. We now have Boots Ennis have one of the straps. We have the Stanionis still out there. We've got some great fights. Why are you tripping off of fighting a former 168-pounder just because his dad was famous, your dad was famous? As an American, I don't give a shit about that fight. I'd like to see him fight some of these great welterweights. Bud Crawford may eventually give up some of those belts. I want to see him fight here in the U.S. and prove that he's a clean fighter, consistently prove that he's a clean fighter. And then I'll be willing to forgive the fact that he tested positive for enclomiphene.
Well, one thing to Dave's point, right? I never thought that this was a fight that Conor Benn wanted. And, Eubank Jr. wanted. This is a fight for their parents, their fathers. That last hire. What is it? 30 years? You guys can correct me. Almost 29, 30 years that happened, and it's just about to happen this time. I mean, for me, it was more about that, a family thing, rather than my son's careers. That's just
and if I believe so, the first one was a fantastic fight.
Yeah.
I've seen it, but it was a unification. It was a unification. They were both champions in that respective weight class. This fight is like a novelty.
No, it wasn't. Nigel Benn was the champion and Chris Eubank was the challenger.
Okay. But still both guys in the same weight class, right?
Yeah.
The second one ended in a draw or something like that, and they never ran it back.
Yeah, it was a controversial draw.
Yeah, it was a close fight. So, Danny, what is the board doing here? Because the decision was made. Now they want to appeal it. And I guess maybe they're kind of upset that this fight's being proposed and the date's being put out there and the appeal hasn't taken place. But at the end of the day, I'm just going to be honest with you. They're not going to win this appeal. I would bet any amount of money on it. It's almost like they're just going through the motions just to kind of be like that pebble in the shoe. Do you think this is all for nothing? I mean, you're over there in the UK. What's the general consensus out there about this whole situation?
Yeah, it seems that the board are now being hard-headed because Conor was being hard-headed at first. He didn't want to hand in that, how many pages? Some crazy amount of pages dossier to the board.
90-page document or something?
Yeah, something like that to the board. He was going on Piers Morgan. He wasn't, complying. He says, I'm giving up my license. So forget the UK, etc. So now he wants to come back. He's realized this is where the money is, isn't it? So he's now he's trying to come back with his tail between his legs. The board are thinking, okay, you did all that, so we're going to make you, squirm and squirm. In the end, I think that his case will win, but they've said something about it. I know they was asked a question, have they got any provisions if they was to lose the appeal? And Robert Smith, who, funny enough, looks so much like, what's his name? Eddie Hearn's little sidekick.
Frank Smith?
Yeah, he looks so, I swear it's his dad, but they're keeping it on the low. So I don't know if there's a little in-house little squabble going on, rebelling from daddy, and daddy wants to teach his son a lesson. But ultimately, I want to see the fight. It's going to be at 160. They've been making provisions for it to be at Tottenham Hotspur on the 3rd of February, which will clash with Dan Aziz versus Boazzi and smoke it out of the water. So they'll probably have to, Ben Shalom will probably have to move that date of that fight because no one's going to go to that fight if the Conor Benn and Eubank thing goes on. So yeah, I just think that, they need to just make it time served, but they're just trying to make Conor Benn, punish him a bit more because of how he initially went on, because he didn't go about it the right way. Now he's trying to rebrand himself, make himself personable, smiling in the camera, trying to make himself, fan friendly and turn up to all the shows, going on little runs here and stuff like that. So yeah, I just think the board's just punishing him a bit more, but they need to let it go and let him fight because the public want to see him fight. At the end of the day, I know when he gets into the arena, everyone's going to boo him, but he's going to be the villain, and he's going to make money. And the board need money. They're not like Mauricio Suleiman and what's his name, Mendoza. They need the bread at the end of the day, and he brings revenue. So yeah, they're just trying to be on the right side of history and not make it look like they're going down without fighting and trying to look like And I think that they've made certain mistakes. There's probably some intricacies in their paperwork which might make them look a bit compromised. It might make them look a bit shady and people look at them a bit sideways. So they're just trying to cover their tracks and do a bit of damage limitation on themselves before it all comes out and they give in.
So Danny is right, Base. I mean, Conor Benn was a little contentious with the board in the beginning, and maybe they were resentful towards that. Maybe this is payback at the end of the day. But is it all for nothing? Because again, when they lose the appeal, what is it all going to be about? Oh, well, we fought to the end, like Danny said. We fought the good fight. We stood up to them. We fought the big time promoter, and we did everything we could do. and we didn't go down without swinging. I mean, what mortal victory do they get out of doing this, Base?
Steve, I've got no idea. I mean, I said months ago I was tired of this whole scenario. The whole decline in the application thing, I don't know. I mean, I'm trying to remember how normal contract law works. Now, I'm not a lawyer, but I do know that, like, if you've got a disciplinary or something at work, or there's an appeals process they want to put you on, and then you want to appeal it, they still got to pay you during that time. Like, effectively, you're still an employee of the company. So restricting his trade at a moment when you can't legally suspend him, and he has a license that allows him to work. It's basically like a work permit. So ultimately, there's nothing on his work permit that will say that he can't work within the UK, or if he went to the US, because he hasn't got a legal crime against him. So there's no reason for you to be restricting his trade apart from some form of vendetta. And that's the thing. It's like, if the appeal's here, while the appeal's going on, he should still be fit to continue until such a time as they win that appeal, and then they have the legal right to suspend him. But I agree with you. I don't think they've got the grounds to do so, because if they would have got it on the first time when the National Anti-Doping Panel ruled. And bear in mind, UCAD are the ones that brought them in. They're an independent body. They have no affiliation to either side. They don't care. They look at the facts as presented by both sides, and they gave an opinion, whatever that may be. Whether it was, the people say it was jurisdiction, but the other side say it had nothing to do with jurisdiction. I don't know.
It wasn't jurisdiction. Wasn't jurisdiction.
That's what they say. That's what Matchroom keeps saying. But every time you go on TalkSport, that's all they ever say.
That's what TalkSport says, but they're wrong, because the amount he had in the system, it was determined that he got it from contaminated food. And
the thing is, and the joke is, with that, I keep thinking to myself, TalkSport keeps saying it was to do with jurisdiction. So does Frank Warren and that, but there's no legal letters that are going around here. So that's the only thing that makes me question what it really is. Because normally, if you've got something like that, that's a libel, that's a baseless accusation, that's a defamatory accusation, and that can cause your client issues, and you can it can restriction of trade and loss of earnings. So I would expect a legal letter saying you need to stop saying that, because that's not true. Here's the proof, or we can't show it to you for whatever, but what you're saying is a lie, and it is damaging our reputation. So the fact that's not being said to me is something I question. But ultimately, the National Anti-Doping Panel, independent of both sides, said he's cleared to fight. The suspension's lifted. So the BBBOC are just being long at this point. But even on TalkSport the other day, when Robert Smith was on there, by the way, why is he going on there giving out news that, that should be news that is going directly to the people? It should be private. That shouldn't be stuff that he can be telling on the radio. But that's another story. But you've got that, and then he's basically saying, Simon Jordan asked him, so if he wins this appeal, will you now not have any more recourse but to allow him to fight? And then Robert's like, well, we don't want to deal in hypotheticals. We don't want to talk about things. But no, he's asked you a direct question. Will you be able to stop him from fighting if you lose the appeal? And he didn't want to answer that. So that tells me that he probably won't, but he'll try and find another loophole to stop.
Yeah,
he'll try and find another loophole, and it's just gonna get messy, even more so than it already is. At the moment, I feel like they've acted poorly. Conor acted like a petulant child to start off with, but now they're acting like a jilted lover as opposed to a natural sanctioning body, like or an organization ratified by by all of the commissions within the sport. Like, do your job. All of this stuff about he hasn't gone through the process. I'm sure you didn't put this much emphasis on every other person that you've deemed to have failed something. Bear in mind that the test that you adhered to, he passed. So you are the people that should have an issue, and they can't because he passed all of their tests. But yet you want to now go on this whole VADA thing, which I saw it in the bylaws that you don't acknowledge anything outside of the WADA accredited labs, and you only acknowledge UCAD. I've seen that in the I don't know if they updated it since that one, but it was there. but now all of a sudden you're on this next crusade. It's just the whole thing's just long. There's more I could say on it, but I'm trying not to get myself in trouble because I know that
we need you at the fight space. We need you at the fights. We need you at the fights.
I'm on certain people's radar with certain comments that I could be making right now. So
don't incriminate yourself, man. Don't incriminate yourself.
I just want to say one more thing. All they have to do after the hearing, if they want to save face, it's just an old saying. And it goes like this: we don't agree with the decision, but we accept it, and you move on. That's it. That's all you got to do. Okay, but it is what it is.
That's perfect. Well, perfectly said, D-Star.
And Conor is on the clean boxing program, by the way.
Yeah,
he is.
Make it clean now. Fight in the U.S. Make more money.
Yeah. All right, guys, that will do it. I want to thank everyone for watching. Thank you to chat. Thank everyone on the panel, and we will see you next time.
Appreciate it. Viva.
Peace.